My name is Mindy Swank, and I am from the Quad Cities, which is in Illinois. In 2009, I got pregnant with our second child. We were very excited. We wanted to have a big family. It was just something we had wanted since we met. And so we were really looking forward to this pregnancy. I actually found out I was pregnant in Germany and I sent home back to the U.S. a postcard from the baby to my husband saying, "Hi, Daddy, I'm here. I'm seeing so many neat things with Mom. Can't wait to meet you." And that's how I told my husband that I was pregnant. So at 16 weeks, I went for an ultrasound at our local hospital, and they just told me there's an enlarged head. And they sent me for further testing the week after at 17 weeks at our regional Catholic hospital. When we got to the regional Catholic hospital, they confirmed that there was hydrocephalus, and they told us about his heart. His heart, they said, had multiple problems. It was twisted and malformed in his chest. They said that veins and arteries were coming out of the wrong ventricles. So we were very concerned, and we made appointments to talk to a pediatric neurosurgeon and a pediatric cardiologist because the hydrocephalus was so bad that his brain was no longer growing normally. There was a lot of brain damage as well. They said, come back in 3 weeks at 20 weeks because there's more things wrong with the heart, but we just can't see them. The heart is too small, and we'll tell you more about his problems when you come back. So at 20 weeks, I went back to the regional Catholic hospital, and they said, your water's broken. And they said at that point, well, you can either terminate the pregnancy now, or you can hold on to the pregnancy, but within a couple weeks, you're going to get an infection, and they're going to have to terminate then just to save your life. He said, if this baby doesn't miscarry soon, and you do by some miracle make it and deliver him, he will die soon after birth. And if by some even bigger miracle he doesn't die after birth, he's going to live his life as a vegetable. When we found out that he wasn't going to live, it was just such an unreal experience. I never thought I would lose a baby. I was just so sad. It was just terrible. At that point, I said, "What if this baby is going to die anyway? Let's end the pregnancy." The Catholic hospital we went to for treatment couldn't treat us because they were Catholic, so they sent us to a public hospital who couldn't treat us because the Catholic hospital didn't send them records. Sending those records, we believe, would make them too complicit in participating in an abortion. And finally, I started bleeding and having some pain, contractions, and I went to our local hospital, and they did an exam, and they said, yeah, we can see there's blood, but you're not bleeding enough, and you're not running a fever. So they sent me home. And this happened 5 times over the course of the next 5 weeks. I would go in bleeding and having some pain, and they would say, well, you're not bleeding enough. You're not running a fever. So they just kept sending me home 5 times over 5 weeks, and they refused to treat me. We had no idea this was a Catholic hospital or a hospital that followed Catholic healthcare restrictions. It was just the hospital that's been around in our area that we've gone to since we were kids. We had no idea. Finally, at 27 weeks pregnant, I woke up in the morning and I was just bleeding everywhere and soaking pads. And so I said, I'm going to bring all these pads into the hospital. I brought them in. I threw the pads in front of the nurse and I said, is this enough blood for you? And they weighed my soaked pads against an empty pad so that they could get the exact amount of blood I had lost so that they could justify a termination. I was terrified. They told me that, I could lose my life, I could lose my uterus, and then on top of that, I didn't know how much my baby was suffering. I kept imagining that he was, going to suffer a horrible death. He was going to, I didn't know what he was feeling. But then on top of that, I kept thinking, am I going to die? When I was in the hospital hemorrhaging at 27 weeks, the doctor came in and told me that I had 2 options. I could either take a drug that would cause contractions so hard the baby would come out of my uterus, not my cervix, in which case they would have to do a hysterectomy because I would start to bleed to death. Or I could choose to have a vertical C-section. So when I heard these options, I broke down and I cried because those were just terrible options. And I thought, this is something that it didn't have to come to this. It took so much out of me mentally, because all I wanted to do was just sit and cry for the baby that I was going to lose, but I hadn't lost yet. After that, he was born. He He tried to breathe. It was a horrible sound. He turned blue for 3 hours and 18 minutes before his heart stopped. And we sat around, we held him. People think that it was this magical time that we got to spend time with this baby. But that wasn't how it was at all, because he tried to breathe. He was turning blue. He wasn't conscious. It wasn't a magical time like people think. It was awful. And I was watching the clock, just waiting for it to be over. So I didn't know what he could feel and what he couldn't feel. And I didn't want him to feel pain. I try to tell myself that he didn't have a brain. Hopefully there were no neurons connecting pain sensors. I really tried a lot to console myself with that thought, just because I just can't stand the idea that, all of this could have been avoided and he wouldn't have felt anything if they would have just terminated the pregnancy when my water broke. We never would have thought that we would have needed an abortion. I would never have looked into whether or not a hospital offered abortions. And I don't think a lot of women even think about it. But it's terrifying to me that when you get into that kind of situation, that there's no one there to help you and there's no one there giving you answers. When we first came into this pregnancy, I was very pro-life. And as we were going through it, my viewpoint really started to change, because I thought, I'm a good person. There are other good women out there who could have this same situation. They're not bad people. They just want to do what's best for their baby. It just makes me so angry that someone who doesn't know my family, who doesn't know me, didn't know my baby, didn't care about my baby. I was the only person in the world who loved my baby. I knew my baby. I was the only person in the world looking out for his best interest. But yet people who don't know me and don't care about us, who never have to live with the repercussions, were making decisions for my baby and for myself. That just feels very wrong.